A very good morning, everyone, and welcome to the day two of the 16th Marketing Conclave. Thank you for joining us at one of the oldest digital marketing events in India. I'm your host, Shivani Agarwal. On behalf of entire IEMAI team, welcomes you once again. We have some super exciting sessions lined up today. Before we move ahead, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our Powered by partner ZFi, Gold partners Infobip, Financial Express Brandwagon, Flipkart, and Jagran New Media. Please also take some time out to visit our exhibitors and check out their offerings. Let's begin the day with a keynote address by Mr. Brian Monahan, Global Client President, Head of US Ventures, Densu Aegis Network. Over to you, Mr. Monahan.
Okay, thank you, Shivani. Good morning, everyone. I will share my screen and we will get started here. Okay, so good morning. Excited to be with you. When I first got the opportunity to give a talk in India, I was like, yes, India is my favorite country to visit. And I forgot for a moment that we're living in this crazy pandemic time. And so greetings from San Francisco, California. I wish I was in India and enjoying the great food and the great culture and the great entrepreneurial energy that exists in India. I know the theme of the conclave is towards the tipping point. And so I wanted to share with you some thoughts this morning about how the pandemic is actually accelerating change and accelerating moves towards the tipping point, which is the overall theme for the conclave. I wear two hats for the Densu Aegis network. I have a client hat, so I lead our global relationship with the Intel Corporation. We provide a number of marketing services for them in 30 countries around the world. And then I have a corporate hat working with our Densu Venture and Innovation Initiative here in the US. I've spent my entire career here in Silicon Valley. I've worked agency side at Densu and Universal McCann. I was client side. I was the head of marketing for Walmart.com, and I've been platform side, working at Pinterest, leading our customer strategy team. And I have a fun little side project organizing the NewCo festivals, which we travel around the world and curate great conferences with startups and offices and open houses in their offices. We've done them in 30 cities and 8 countries around the world. So my point of view is informed by that perspective. And what I wanted to share with you today, again, is a perspective on how we are accelerating change. And I'll just advance my screen here. My colleague, Vivek Bhagrav, he likes to talk about how COVID-19 is flattening the world. And I think he's absolutely right. We are learning new skills about how to work together in new fashions from new locations. And I'm going to talk more about that in a second. But I would also say that COVID-19 is providing pressure, right? It's providing pressure on the world, certainly the business world, where we have economic headwinds. You know, we have social unrest, certainly here in the U.S. We have environmental unrest. We have the health pandemic. So there is a lot of pressure being put upon businesses overall, and that pressure, we believe, is forcing acceleration of change. And things that were on the roadmap as, these are kind of trends, slow moving, something to keep your eye on. It's now, it's moving fast. What we're seeing are our clients have to make big changes. Our agencies have to make big changes to stay competitive and to stay afloat in these challenging times. So what I wanted to share with you are where we at the Densu Aegis network see areas of acceleration around how brands are built, how brands go to market, and how agencies and our service companies, how we are thinking about aligning our services against these new requirements and trying to build out our technology, our capability, our partnerships to succeed in this new era. I'm going to talk about each one of these areas in turn. I don't think that there'll be, I don't expect anybody at this conference to hear one of these trends and say, wow, I never heard of that before. But the point I really just want to share is this is how we see the future of marketing, period. It's not a piece. It's like this is where we think it is going. And it's how we are trying to think in an innovative fashion to prepare ourselves to participate in those areas of change. The first thing around remote working. So one big area of change that's happening for us is, as everyone had to leave the office and work from home, it's accelerating a change that was already in motion, but it's having us start to reorient from being really sort of oriented around big offices in city centers with expensive real estate and having some sort of resources externally. And for us, we're really thinking about how we orient around the client and the client, what they need, be close to the client and have the resources available to them wherever that may be, right? And that includes teams that do not sit together, do not sit in the same city, do not sit in the same country. Even just on my team, which I manage, as I mentioned, to service the Intel Corporation, here the team servicing the HQ client, we've got a team member in Brazil, we've got team members up in Canada, we've got them across the US, and we've just figured out how to work together. And that was actually in motion before COVID hit, and now we're all developing new skills about how to work together in this new way. And I think this creates some opportunities. I mean, first of all work has to be in the cloud. It's hard to imagine work that's not, but it just feels like now if you're working on something and it's not a collaborative doc that you can edit and collaborate with in the cloud, it's so inefficient. It's just become the way we expect to work. And at the same time, it just feels like we are in these early days of having true collaboration tools. We were just doing something the other day here, and it was kind of replicating one of those sort of idea jam brainstorm type sessions where normally you'd be at the whiteboard and you're drawing things and you're putting Post-it notes and everyone's getting ideas and you're collaborating. Well, how do you do that? How do you do that through video screens? We were doing it on simple Google Docs, and we had little colored squares, and they were our Post-it notes, and we were dropping them and we're just kind of finding crude new ways to collaborate in these remote virtual teams. And I think it's a huge opportunity. We haven't even begun to see what we think that experience could be. And just like ways of working and norms of working and how to work together. A lot that we're going to learn. There's going to be a lot of innovation just to support this type of work. And I think it's a huge opportunity for some of the great innovation that's coming out of India to really just expand around the world, because the requirements for proximity are not what they once were just 6 months ago. Another trend, digital platforms are dominating message distribution. So, a platform is really something that other things are built upon, and the ability to distribute content at scale to users. We're just seeing explosive growth. And whether that's time spent, these are US data charts, whether it's time spent with social media in the US, whether it's TikTok's explosive adoption in the US, or whether it's Facebook's continued ad revenue, despite a very prominent advertiser boycott here in the US. These platforms have proven to be such incredible media products, such incredible ad products that they are impossible to compete with. And really, it's that combination of having authenticated identity, having really rich signal of what people are doing on the platform, and virtually no cost to produce the content. Just an incredible model to drive ad performance. And so we're seeing all media trying to really embrace this platform type model. In the US, in the television space, you see Roku and Hulu, and the new entrant, Peacock, from Comcast, Samsung. They're becoming their own walled gardens, distributing video content, trying to replicate a lot of that success that the digital platforms have had. In the out-of-home space in the US, Vistar, Place Exchange, even the Trade Desk is getting into creating these platform for digital signage. So we think this is a big trend now. There are absolutely real issues around the business practices of platforms and the effect they have on society. We've seen a big shift in the US just over the last 3 months of brands moving from talking about brand safety to brand suitability. Brand safety is really about to what does my ad appear adjacent to? Really, it's about ad adjacency. Brand suitability is looking at the business practices of the vendor that the brand is choosing to work with and associate with. And that's very different. So I think that the platforms are going to continue to get a lot of advertiser pressure to police what happens on their platforms, even outside of where their ads appear. But I do believe that their ad products are just so powerful that they will continue to dominate the way that messages get distributed into the world. On the paid advertising front, we just expect all media to be transacted in a programmatic fashion. The bar to the right shows U.S. digital programmatic ad spend, and it's really just sort of taken over display advertising. We think that's going to move across all media, and really just, again, talking about the pressure that COVID provides to wreak out any inefficiencies and streamline operations. I mean, programmatic, you have automated transactions and auction formats, so you're not paying more than you need to pay, which frankly sort of challenges some of the conventions around what does clout get you? And so we think that automated media buying, programmatic media buying is just the way that media is going to be bought. And so we're really interested in how this method expands to every part of the media ecosystem. Targeting. Obviously, in the digital marketing industry these days, we are obsessed with data and the application of data. And a lot of that comes down to understanding to whom we're speaking and to actually be able to resolve that, not just to a broad cohort, but to an actual ID that has rich attributes associated with it, and to program content based on all of those attributes is proven to be incredibly powerful. I have seen 3 things in my career that can really drive step change efficiency gains in how you buy media. One is if you drop the price in half. The other one is if you have a smoking hot offer. And the third one is if you move to addressable targeting. It's that big of a step change. And so it is how media is going to be bought. It's how marketing is going to be delivered. Now, delivering on that requires a lot of change, right? We need media owners are going to have to authenticate users. You're going to need user permission and compliance, which is going to be increasingly a whole industry unto itself as regulations roll out and become pervasive across different legislative areas. Clients, advertisers are going to build identity graphs, their own first-party identity graphs, which means the ability to connect various identity graphs together to make a match and decide who to target. Huge opportunity. LiveRamp's recent earnings just show how successful they've been in that sector. One thing I'll call out is, as we move to this world of identity bought programmatically in platforms, it makes it very hard to orchestrate exposure across the different platforms, even if you can target an individual. And so I think we're going to see a lot of innovation around that orchestration at the user level across multiple walled gardens. Next trend. User experiences are personalized. So we've been talking about this forever. Yes, I dusted off the Tom Cruise movie, but that's really what we aspire to do, and you're seeing it now more and more. And it's not just knowing who somebody is, but it's also knowing the previous interactions. Right? It drives me nuts, and it drives our clients nuts when we, as brands, behave like we have amnesia and we forget when we are interacting with the customer what we did previously. So understanding that and building personalized experience is something that is just going to be pervasive throughout the customer journey, right? So it's not just ads or dynamic creative or personalized web pages, personalized email, right? It's when you call in or when you enter the store, to have personalization be brought with you to that user experience. And you see that, brands like, Airbnb or, Netflix, like they just do this really well, where they always feel like every interaction, they kind of remember what you last did with them. And we think that's the North Star for what interaction with the brand is going to be. It's what consumers' expectations will be. Messages will be triggered by data signals. Now, this is something that's pretty interesting. And what I see our teams doing on the media planning side is we're not just talking about like how we can cover a target audience and capping frequency, or just sort of like figuring out how if somebody takes an action, we just retarget them, and we just keep hitting them with the same ad. Really starting to think about branching storytelling, right? Which is more akin to how you would design a video game, right? If you think about branching storytelling as you design a video game, the user walks down a hall, they open the second door on the left, they walk through the door, they turn left, they go, and like something happens differently based on what that user does. And so as we're laying out our exposure trees, and whether these are ads or emails or ads and emails synced together and other types of communication, really starting to think about the decision trees and what data represents the trigger to then serve that next chapter of the story, and like figuring out how we do this, how we set up these decision trees as branching storytelling is a huge area of opportunity, and where we think we will see innovation in how brands go to market. Always on lifecycle marketing replaces campaigns. This was something I learned about the power of when I was running marketing at Walmart.com, which is that the notion of, your customers never sleep. And there's somebody who has a need for your product or is in the market virtually every minute of every day. And it's not enough if you just sort of pulse your marketing, and if you're lucky, you happen to be there. But if there's an opportunity out there, you want to be able to serve that customer. And so we've seen a lot that's happened with search engine marketing in terms of being always on, waiting for people to enter a query and be ready to message to them. We've seen a lot of sophistication happening with email marketing in terms of activities that people take, particularly with e-commerce, abandoned carts or price drops or back in stock. They're all these types of messages that are triggered based on what you've seen. But now we're starting to see it also get pushed out into more touch points, and as we have better identity, better data fabric to set rules about, if somebody qualifies for this type of message, I'm going to have an ad. I'm going to bid on that profile, and I'm going to serve them an ad. So we think that lifecycle marketing, always on lifecycle marketing, is expanding beyond the relatively few media vehicles that it's been in to date, and is going to become just the way that brands think about sort of having this net of communications that's always out in the market. there's huge opportunity in here to help with this trend. Managing your budget. So when you've set all these things up, you could burn through your budget without even realizing it. How do you manage your budget? What about zombie efforts? We had a bunch when I was at Walmart. We had a bunch of these triggered emails that were part of this sort of always-on activity. And sometimes people would get an email, and we couldn't even figure out why. And it was like some program that somebody set up a year and a half ago, and they forgot about it. And now we were trying to figure out why it was spamming people. So there's a lot that's going to go into how you manage all of this activity as you set it up, but it's so powerful because it's so precisely targeted to your customers when they're receptive, that we expect this just to be the way that marketing is done. And there'll be campaigns that pulse on top of it, but it'll be on top of a rich layer of this expanded lifecycle marketing. Okay, retail becomes media. So we're definitely seeing this in the U.S. and other major markets, but the big retailers have gotten in the media business in a big way. Heck, today there are rumors that Walmart and Microsoft are going to combine to buy TikTok, and that's because Walmart has become a media company in many ways with Walmart Media Group. Target has Roundel. Kroger, which is the largest grocer in the U.S., has Kroger Precision Media. And then you have Amazon Advertising as well, the biggest, by far the biggest retail media offering. And so these are incredibly powerful media vehicles, A, because of the real estate, B, because of the customer data. And you really have visibility to past purchase. You can reach people there at the moment of truth. It's a very powerful proposition. You get good reporting on incrementality and closing the loop. And retailers love it because there's way more margin in being a media company than there is in being a retailer. So it's great for their business. So you see them rushing into it. And what we're seeing on the service side of things is it's creating a whole new need for a specialty service offering. The same way that we have, search agencies and social agencies, we're developing retail media agencies, and it's that important, and it requires, it's birthing a whole new industry, if you will. And it's a nice part of this ultimate customer journey, where we're sort of mapping people all the way through that journey. We believe that marketing activity and optimizing that activity is beyond human comprehension, right? That it's become a software problem. When I was at Pinterest and understood for the first time how many attributes of ad performance are available to advertisers to start to discern the patterns that predict success. It's incredibly powerful data if you can make sense of it. And so what we really believe is in the power of test and learn and get smarter and get better every single day. Having machines do that for you is a great way to look at more data to find the pattern that really predicts success. What I would flag for everyone is that it's one thing to have your campaign optimized, right? It's great to say like, hey, I took my CAC down by 20%. I took my ROAS down. I took my cost per completed video view, whatever your objective is. But it's another thing to know why, right? And to be able to understand why so that you can do something with it. And I think finding those nuggets of insight that can then inform other creative strategy overall is a real opportunity, because the tools that are available now are really blunt force instruments. And so this is an area that we're looking at really closely at Densu about how we can bring this technology into the way we work and get the learning out of it on the other side. The Last trend that we think is being accelerated by the pressure that COVID is putting on the global economy right now is really this move towards insourcing marketing teams. And so, this is a really interesting topic. Obviously, for us as an agency in the service business, it's an existential issue for us. But what we see happening is less black and white and more of hybrid models. I mean, it makes sense for advertisers where their business is very sensitive to their ad support, traffic driving. So retail is really like it's that having that real time impact on the business makes sense to have it in house. If you have really sensitive customer data that you don't want to share outside of your walls, makes sense to have it in house. If you have a really clear objective, like get me new customers, and you don't have a matrixed organization with 5 different stakeholders, then it's pretty straightforward to build an in-house growth marketing team. On the other hand, there are what we're finding are there some clients that will start to bring it in-house and then they'll outsource it again when they realize they need more flexibility. They need to ramp up, they need to ramp down, because they need access to different type of specialty talent that they have trouble finding and getting inside their company. Maybe they just don't have the headcount for it to compete for the best talent. And then it still really matters to have relationships with suppliers in the marketing ecosystem and understand what works, and having learned from other clients in that type of perspective. So we don't really see this as an in-source out as an either or type thing. What we are building to is more of a hybrid type of model, and it's the work that we're doing with Procter & Gamble is a great example of that type of hybrid model. So those are 10 areas that we think are accelerating in this time of COVID. Again, I don't think there's anything in here that's sort of never heard of before, but again, this is just the way it's going to be, and there's no turning back. And the companies that get this right and have competitive advantage can win at this very disruptive and fluid time, right? So people who get really good at remote work and collaboration, who know how to work with the scaled platforms, transacting programmatically in an automated, streamlined fashion, leveraging identity to scrub out all that waste and to deliver personalized experiences throughout that customer journey, powered by real-time data triggers and knowing when somebody reaches this state, it's time to show them this, and having that all set up and ready to go throughout that customer life cycle in an always-on fashion, including the final leg of the customer journey at retail, and thinking of that as part of this customer journey. With artificial intelligence, looking across this and optimizing, getting smarter every single day in organizations that are a mix of hybrid and a hybrid of insourced and outsourced. So that's the type of world that we're building for at the Dentsu Aegis network. And it really opens an opportunity to work with some great new partners, which is why we have launched the Densu Technology Accelerator platform, ETAP, here in India, which is an early stage investing and support program, looking at technologies that sit on top of scaled platforms, but have the potential for global scale. And frankly, present the opportunity for our agencies, our service business, to generate new type of service work for them. So my colleague Vivek Bhargava is leading this up. Vivek is actually here and will be joining me for the Q&A. And I just wanted to close by saying, we talked about that COVID was flattening the world and putting pressure and squeezing us into having to get into some uncomfortable type of changes in how we do work. But, as the old saying goes, when you get lemons, make lemonade. And this disruption always creates creates opportunity. So with that, I'll just say thank you for joining me this morning, and happy to take some questions.
Cool, Brian. I see a question on the iOS update and how it's going to impact the targeting of ads. I think it'll be an interesting question because I think this is going to be one big change, at least for the US market, which is 50% iOS. India, it probably is 3% iOS, but I think it's an interesting question. How do you think it's going to impact the industry?
I mean, it's going to be a big change, and I honestly, I don't think we know, but what I do see happening is a rush for our US clients to really start to build their own identity graph and understand their own customer base, and to have ways of then thinking about where can I work with other partners that have authenticated users in a way to connect. So, but it is definitely going to be disruptive.
So I think, Brad, I'm going to spend about 30 seconds further on DTAP, just adding to your presentation. You know, when I was listening to your presentation, I was just realizing there were so many ideas in the presentation, which can be opportunities for ad tech and martech companies out of India. Even when you say retail becomes media, there is a company called OnlineSales.ai in India, which basically creates an advertising platform for retailers. So they install the platform and they make it almost like Amazon advertising for the retailer. So similarly, there are companies that actually take AI and give you insights from it. The biggest advantage that we've had is that we always acquire 30, 40 companies every year from different markets. But all the acquisitions have been in the services sector. Now the opportunity is to acquire or fund companies in the product sectors, because then we can take them global. We built the Dentsu marketing cloud out of India, and now it has gone to 35 countries. So if we get an opportunity to invest in tech in India, we can take them to 50, 100 markets. Just Intel itself will be in 40, 50 markets. So you build tech out of India, we fund it as Densu, and straight away Intel can take it into 50, 40, 50 markets. So I think that's what the opportunity is. I hope some of the people listening to these conversations can take a few ideas from your presentation, build products for it. We will fund it, and then we're going to come to you and say, Brian, please help us take it global.
Well, it's great. Our clients are looking for competitive advantage, and I think, Vivek, like you've said about it, the geographic proximity is not the requirement that it once was, and to be able to take good technology, effective, that's efficient, and scale it globally, that's what our clients are looking for.
Yeah. So yesterday I was discussing the same thing, that last 30 years, a lot of companies in India created wealth by providing services. The next 30 years is the age of product companies out of India. And I think this whole COVID-19 has flattened the world, you mentioned, our allowing these companies to go global quickly. Because when I got acquired in 2012, we remained in the Indian market because services companies are impossible to scale globally, but product companies can be. I think this is where the evolution of even the agency world will have to be, where all of us agencies will have to build some kind of technology companies at some level, because that's where the scale is going to come from and globalization is going to come from. Okay, so one of the other things, the question I think in a way you have covered, but in a way, are there any further changes that you see in the advertiser spending because of the pandemic? So one comment I had out here was that I've been reading about customer centricity, where 20% of the customers give you 200% of your profits. So I think when the spends of clients reduce, I think it's going to be important that target more precisely for the high value customers.
Yeah, that's right. I would agree. I mean, we initially in the U.S. saw big changes depending on different categories, right? So, retail, travel, they really sort of pulled back dramatically on their ad spend. Healthcare, technology, like not as much because their businesses were not as impacted. What we see happening now is our clients starting to think about this K-shaped recovery, where there are certain segments, certainly of the U.S. Population, that are not as impacted economically, and the stock market's doing great. And then there are other parts that are still out of work, and so being able to figure out like where you can find growth as a brand, to your point about identifying your best customer, is critical. As brands can't just sort of pull up the drawbridge and wait for the storm to pass. At some point, they have to get out and start to find growth wherever they can find it. So figuring out where you have pockets of opportunity is going to be really important.
Okay, one sensitive question. What do you think is the future of print media?
Well, I know in India it's still a very vibrant medium, and we were talking earlier, Vivek, about in India the internet penetration is 50%, or it's I think it's this is not a global prediction, but in the U.S. at least, it's not good. It's the outlook for print is challenging. Certainly, newspapers. It's having incredible societal impacts, particularly with newspapers and the lack of economic support for local news, and we see our print spending continuing to decline here in the U.S.
Actually, I think one of the main reasons why print continued to grow in India was that we had this thing where the newspaper would land up at our doorstep. And the countries that continued that, which is Japan and India, print grew. But countries where you had to go and collect the newspaper somewhere, that's where it declined, all parts of the world. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has accelerated that need of, so let's say I stopped newspapers in my house just because I was slightly worried from a safety point of view. And now, unfortunately or fortunately, I've not gone back as yet. So my habit of reading the newspaper in the morning has already changed. So I think this is definitely going to have a negative impact. I think all of us, whether we are agencies, we are publishers, we have to be in a business that can't be defined by print or advertising. So we have to see, we are in the content business. How do we develop that further?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One question is about sustainability as a competitive differentiation in the tech world. Probably more relevant in the US market, but
Yeah. Well, so I would say, as far as brand building overall in the U.S., given all the social unrest that's happening here, there's a lot of thought about brand values, corporate values, and how those can be communicated to their customers and prospects. And particularly for younger generations, our research shows that the sort of values of a brand are really important in terms of the products that they're going to choose to consume. So we see a lot of our customers, our clients in the U.S. trying to think about how they can, what type of sort of values they stand for, B, how they're going to really support them in their business operations. So Intel, for example, has taken environmental sustainability to heart and has some very real initiatives throughout their manufacturing plants to really control their carbon output. And so, that's the hard part, like actually getting that right, and then figuring out how to talk about it in the marketing. But it is absolutely something that we're thinking of. I mean, when COVID came out, just back to this whole point of like COVID as this accelerator, every brand had to stop and think about how they could talk about supporting their customers in this time, and like what that actually meant, and force them to kind of really think hard about kind of were they actually doing enough. So this is definitely a part of brand building, and it is here to stay.
So I think Shivani has come back in just to tell us that our time is over. So yeah, so I think thanks a lot, Brian, for staying up so late in California. I wish the next conference, hopefully soon, we should have you in India. And then I think that will be much more fun, interacting with people and the food and experiencing the culture. But thanks a lot for spending so much time, and very insightful. Some of the thoughts, I've already got some product ideas in my mind, and we must discuss further offline.
All right, great. Thanks for having me. And yeah, Vivek, I'll take you up on that. Next time we do this, we'll do the talk and then we'll go get a great dinner somewhere. So thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure.
Mr. Monahan, it was delightful listening to you. Thank you to our wonderful audience as well. Please stay tuned for more such action.